Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we're taking a look at the hand traps from specific archetypes, and basically like searchable hand traps that you can use in Archetype to do different things, right? And how good they are in correlation to other such hand traps. So, these are all basically just hand traps that do different things for specific archetypes. And a lot of these, pretty much all of these are newer. I think the oldest one here is maybe Scythe. I don't know if this is all of the hand traps as well. I have a feeling that some of the other ones could technically be considered hand traps in a few other things. Like, for example, Infernoble technically has a hand trap in what's his name? Roland, who equips from hand to gain 500 attack. Honest could all... Well, no, Honest isn't an archetypal hand trap. But, like, it's basically an Honest for Infernoble, but no one would play that. We're not going to talk about that. The point is, these are the hand traps that are most used as hand traps. And we're just going to quickly go through these. Now, I have a few of the actual hand traps pulled up. That being the newer stuff, mostly. Because most of the other stuff is stuff that we already know and or understand how it works. So starting off with the Dragon Tail one, which I do have pulled up, because this is a card that is not yet in Master Duel, not yet in the TCG, and barely has seen play in the OCG. So I would not be surprised if most of you didn't know what this does. But this says, quick effect, during the main phase, discard to fusion summon a dragon or spellcaster monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. Basically, quick effect polymerization. That's more or less what it is for the Dragon Tail archetype, and honestly, just in general, this is just a very, very solid card. You can legitimately make Dragoon on the opponent's first turn, which is very, very silly, and also not very good. But you can do that, right? Or you could do the entirety of the Dragon Tail archetype's main line during the opponent's turn, which is hilarious as well. You basically get to play Branded on the opponent's turn. Gosh, could you imagine that? I don't want to think about that. Anyway, very, very powerful card inherently. However, that being said, I do want to judge these based on their effectiveness as hand traps. So basically, like, what they would accomplish in, like, interacting with the opponent and what that overall accomplishes, right? So, for example, if I were to activate Ash Blossom, that specifically interacts with my opponent and slows them down. So that's kind of where we're going with this, right? Or like Phantasme is a good example, right? Where it's like, Phantasme doesn't actually do anything, but it does generate you advantage. So those, anyway, you kind of get the point, right? Hopefully. Basically, this is an A tier. Yes, this is an A tier archetypal hand trap. And the reason I'm going to put it into A tier here and not S tier is, one, because I have a few cards in mind that I'm going to put into S tier, and two, it does require a few more cards to make it really powerful and really work in tandem, kind of like with itself and with some of the other cards in the archetype to really function properly and get the entire bonus out of it. But it doesn't really do anything as a hand trap. It's just like a free advantage engine. So I don't really necessarily say that it's like the best hand trap and or archetypal hand trap, but it is very, very powerful and still extremely strong. And overall, like, being able to gain access to pretty much any of those dragon and or spellcaster fusion monsters is very, very useful. So for the most part, I don't really think that it's worse than A. Next up, we have Tier Cash, which I'm just going to immediately slot into D tier. This is one of the worst archetypal hand traps. Now, that may seem very strange, but all it does is summon in mill 3. The problem is that in tier, that's like extremely good, but as a whole, as a hand trap and the effect that it does, it requires you to banish another card either from hand and or from grave, which would require you to actually have the card already in grave, or to have an additional card in hand. It's not very advantageous for that effect, and then it mills some cards either from you or from the opponent. That is fairly decent in terms of what deck it is used for, but that being said, all of these cards are absolutely insane. Putting this in D tier is not saying that it is a bad card. I'm saying that in comparison to some of the most powerful cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's slightly weaker. I'm also going to put Airlifter here for a similar reason. Airlifter specifically requires you to have the card already in hand for you to make use of it, which makes it significantly weaker in an archetype that doesn't really generate an advantage by putting a random guy onto your field. Sometimes you can, like Airlifter with like a fire engine, or Airlifter with maybe a few other of the Rescue Ace cards, but even with that, it still requires a lot. It basically requires 2 cards in your hand to do kind of some things sometimes, where maybe you'll generate advantage by drawing 2 and discarding 1 with the drone-looking one. I can't remember its name off the top of my head. It's the one you generally get off of Impulse, which we'll talk about in a second. But for the most part, I don't really think that that's an insane... most of the time, it's not really worth it, is what I'm trying to say. Again, still a good card, but this is honestly... Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, this is probably the only D tier card on here, because, again, it is so disadvantageous unless you draw very, very specific cards, whereas pretty much everything else is, like, generally better, and Tier Cash I just think is slightly better than that. But that being said, yeah, these are not exactly the greatest of cards. Moving on, we have Arius. Arius is S tier. Here's why. Arius does something that no other one of these hand traps does pretty much at all. And it directly interacts with the opponent. You get to go Arius discard to set a trap. That trap, or special summon a monster. That trap could be something as simple as Welcome Labyrinth, which just allows you to get your engine online, or more likely what it's going to be is something like Dimensional Barrier, Daruma Karma Cannon, or Simultaneous Equation Cannon, which basically can just entirely invalidate an opponent's turn, or actually just win you the game basically on the spot by banishing everything that they have. So generally speaking, it can be a little bit more hit or miss, but those hits are so insanely powerful that it warrants the inclusion in a lot of different lists, and is basically an auto-include in a lot of Labyrinth lists because of the fact that it allows you to not only go first very effectively by getting your engine online immediately, but also, more specifically, to actually interact with the opponent, which not a lot of these other cards do, which is why I think it's S tier. It's one of the greatest of the, like, archetypal hand traps, because it basically just, like, cheats the mechanic of traps, which Yu-Gi-Oh!, which, more specifically, the Konami company just despises for some reason. So, yeah, it's S tier. I really don't think that there are much that competes with it. Next up, we have ourselves the new Super Quant card, which is Black Layer, which says, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can discard 1 other card, and if you do special summon this card, and then on special, you can special summon a Super Quant Mech Beast Xe monster from your extra deck by using this card you control as material. And if you do, attach a Super Quant monster from your grave to it as additional material. Now, notably, this is fairly decent, right? Because basically, if you have any of the other layers, red, blue, green, etc., you can basically discard and then slap that guy on top, or underneath one of your big monsters. Now, the Super Quants have a few cards that actually interact with the opponent, and if they have the right guy attached to them, that being the corresponding color, they then get that at a quick effect speed, which means that something like a Grand Pulse, is that the card that I'm thinking of? It's the blue one, is then able to pop the opponent's cards, or basically interact with the opponent. This is a very, very solid card. It is not an insane card, and the main reason for this is because it relies on what else is in your hand, similar in nature to Dragon Tail, or the Dragon Tail monster, right? I'm going to put it in A tier. It is still very strong. It puts a guy onto your field. It is extremely easy to proc, which is also another thing. And most notably, it still has that disruption effect, similar to that of like Arius or, again, the Dragon Tail card. However, the biggest downside is that it is not something that you can actively choose what you do, which makes me kind of want to put it a bit lower, but I mean, you're still Xe summoning a guy, you're still getting your combo online, you can still use it on like your turn as well. If your opponent like hand traps you, you just go cool anyway, similar to that of like Tristaros in Crystron, or Arius in Labyrinth, which is also right there. So yeah, all in all, a fairly decent card, and I would say it is probably A tier. Next up, we have this Earth's Arctic card, which I'm not gonna lie, I genuinely do not know what it is. So Earth's Arctic. I have a general sense. During the main phase, you contribute one other level 7 or higher monster in your hand to special summon this card from your hand. You cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except for monsters with a level. If this card is special summoned and you control another Earth's Arctic, you can target one card your opponent controls, in your opponent's grave, banish it. Here's the problem with this. It's bad DD Crow. And in the sense that, like, having the ability to special summon itself from hand is advantageous because it allows you to go into your synchro monsters more effectively, and that is generally what you're aiming to do with that effect. That being said, its hand trap ability and the use of it as a hand trap is not great. It's basically a DD Crow, but not nearly as advantageous because DD Crow can hit basically anything and doesn't require a specific setup. This one would require you to already have a guy on field, which is not necessarily great going second because you're likely not going to have that guy on field. So all in all, I don't think it's really all that great, and it's pretty bad. But at the very least, it does have that disruption, so it's something. Okay, next up we got two other new cards that we have yet to see in Master Duel, most notably. But we have Vanquish Holy Sue, which is a Earth Psychic monster. But it says during the main phase, you can reveal one other Vanquish Soul monster in your hand to special summon this card. That's it. You just reveal a guy and go, look at this guy. And then this card's on the field. On top of that, at quick effect speed, pretty much all of the high level Vanquish Soul monsters, actually all of the Vanquish Soul monsters have this effect where they reveal a specific amount of, a specific type of monster, Earth, Dark, or Fire, attribute, I should say, Earth, Dark, or Fire, and or Fire, and then they do a thing. This one says you can activate one of these effects by revealing the listed monsters from hand. Earth and Dark, you can take control of an opponent's monster with the lowest attack until the end phase. Very powerful effects. Or Fire and Dark, you can special summon one non-psychic Vanquish Soul monster from your deck. Meaning, if you just have the right attributes, you can either take control of your opponent's monster or get your entire combo online. Because, yeah, it's specials from deck. So if you just have Fire and Dark, you basically get to go, you know, into the full Vanquish Soul combo on the opponent's turn, which is very powerful. If you go like Raisin search Xiaolong, you can then special summon Xiaolong, and then Xiaolong could either like switch something to defense, or more likely, hopefully if you have another Fire in hand, you can reveal the two Fires and search out another guy and then bounce and go off from there. There's a ton that you can do off of that, off of those individual effects. That being said, this is one of, again, the greatest hand traps of all time. It's absolutely insane. One, it could either get you your entire combo on the opponent's turn, or two, it could just yoink their monster and basically invalidate like an entire line of play from them, which is pretty powerful, right? Being able to do both of those is very powerful, and being able to do both of those at quick effect speed on the opponent's turn is also very nice. And I know, like, oh, but you have to reveal like specific types or specific attributes. The whole deck is centered around being able to do that specifically. It's not exactly difficult to do. You can just do that. It's just a thing you can do oftentimes. So yeah, this is generally an extremely powerful hand trap, and it's one of the reasons why currently in the OCG, Vanquish Soul K9 is one of the strongest decks of all time. Speaking of which, the next card up here is the K9. Yeah, let's just read this real quick. It's the new K9 card, Izzuna, which says, during the main phase, if your opponent activates a monster effect in hand or in grave, which is, again, extremely easy, extremely expected to do, you can special summon this card from hand. On special summon, you search a K9 card from deck or grave. Now, this doesn't sound crazy, except for the fact that it also does absolutely insane stuff, because one, it's super easy to fulfill, and two, it basically gets you the entire K9 line on the opponent's turn. The whole idea of K9 is doing this combo during the opponent's turn. So you basically get to do all of the stuff during the opponent's turn, and you just get to like play the game on their turn. Similar in nature to that of Holy Sue, and similar in nature to Arius, kind of as well as the Draco Tail, as well as the Super Quant. All of these basically do the same thing. And there's no like luck involved or anything like that with something like Tier Cash. So you just kind of like get to do the whole canine line. There's not like a whole lot that it's actually doing, to be fair. But like you do actually get to do stuff and make cards that interact with the opponent on their turn just by them like naturally playing the game. So all in all, I would say that this is like a pretty good card. I don't know, maybe it's not S tier, but I think it's S tier. But it's definitely comparable to that of the other cards on this list. Next up, we have Scythe. That's what it's called, right? It's the Frightful Scythe, I believe. Which basically is the quick effect fusion spell for the Archetype, which just allows you to fusion summon, similar to that of the Draco Tail one. However, the difference is that I believe you are locked into Frightful monsters from the extra deck. Let me actually triple D check on that. Frightful... How do you spell Scythe? Is it not Scythe? Oh, it's Edge Imp. Edge Imp. Yep, there we go. Yes, it is specifically a Frightful fusion monster. Using monster from hand or field as fusion material, including this card in your hand. Now, that is honestly not that bad, but I do think it is a step below the other two for two reasons. One, actually, I'm just lying to you. No, this card's great. I was like, is it a step below? But then I remembered, like, actually, Super Quant is probably arguably a step below these two, because these two are, like, just significantly better. This one requires a bit more setup. I'm going to move this one down. I'm going to move the Super Quant one down. But these two are just, like, yeah, just fusion summon during your opponent's turn. It's, like, extremely powerful. Yeah, no. Scythe is one of the... It's one of the oldest archetypal hand traps, but it's also by far one of the best. It's so insanely powerful in what it actually accomplishes for the archetype. It's like one of the main gimmicks of the archetype, because on summon they have a monster, I forget exactly which one. I believe it's not Wolf, it's the other one. Is it Tiger? I don't know. They have one of them that just like nukes the field, which is very, very good. So all in all, very solid card. We're going to talk about all of the Labyrinth ones here in a second, or right now. I'm not going to lie, most of these are pretty mid. We're going to put the Stovey Sorby and Chandelier in the same tier at C. I think they're pretty bad overall, but they're not, like, terrible, right? They do allow you to basically, like, start your combos a turn early. It's a little bit slower than that of, like, Arius or, again, pretty much all of the other, like, newer archetypal hand traps. But that being said, they're still powerful enough to see play. So there's that. Ku Klok, I think, is actually pretty bad. It's too restrictive in what it accomplishes to make it really accomplish what it needs to in the current pace of Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, it's not bad. It's in here with archetypal hand traps, so you're comparing them to statistically powerful cards. Pretty much every single one of these decks, except for 2, have been top meta decks. 3. Super Quant's not top meta, but you get the point, right? Like, pretty much every single one of these, because of these insanely powerful cards, have been top meta decks. And, yeah, Ku Klok is still there, it's still competing, and it still was one of the reasons why this deck worked so well, but it definitely does less than a lot of the other stuff. But being able to, like, activate a card, or a trap, the turn it's set is still very powerful. Nonetheless, even with the restrictions and all of that jazz, it's still very powerful. Next up, we have Havness. Havness is a good card. It's not insane, but it is a good card. The thing is, when this card was as powerful as people remember it to be, it was mostly due to the fact that you could basically mill any 3 cards from the top of your deck and immediately hit something to go full combo off of the myriad of things that you could hit when Tearlament was at full power. That is no longer the case. That hasn't been the case for quite some time. And all in all, Haveness itself as a hand trap doesn't actually do all that much. It's just more consistent than that of pretty much everything below it. It still does the thing that it's designed to do, and it does it fairly frequently, if not always, pretty much. Your opponent's always going to be able to, or try to always have a card effect or a monster effect activate on the field, and Haveness can take advantage of that very easily, similar to that of many of the other cards on this list, especially the higher tier stuff. On top of that, you also just get to do your combo as well, and you could do it on that turn, which is very nice. Just slightly worse, I think, in my opinion, just due to the fact that it's not nearly as consistent. So, I say consistent, but, like, that is more, like, the, you know, Special Summon Mill 3 is not nearly as powerful of an effect by itself. It's just that all of the rest of the tier element cards are also so insanely powerful that pretty much hitting anything makes it good. But you still have to hit those cards, right? And now it's, like, significantly worse because of that. It's also at 1, so you're going to see it less, yada yada. You get the point, right? That being said, still a powerful card. I just don't think it's that insane of a hand trap itself in terms of an archetypal hand trap. Does that make sense? Yes, if it hits, it's crazy. Back in the day, it was one of the most insane hand traps because you could just play during your opponent's turn. That being said, I don't think the hand trap effect is necessarily what made it so powerful in and of itself. I don't know, maybe. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is A tier. The more that I think about it, the more I'm like, no, this is probably an A tier card. But maybe that's just because of how powerful tier was. This one's hard for me to genuinely judge because I'm like, is it powerful because tier is powerful? Or is it powerful because it's actually just a good card and tier made it even more so? We'll leave it an A. Next up, we have Impulse. Impulse is actually a very, very powerful card, all things considered as well, because it has the same restriction as that of Haveness, but notably what it doesn't have is kind of that gamble feature. You basically guarantee what you're getting. If you activate the effect of the Impulse, you discard it, you then get to freely special summon the guy from deck. Overall, I do think it is a more powerful effect. It's just tied to a slightly worse archetype, but if, like, Tier Element had this card, they'd be insanely busted. Granted, they already were, but, like, you get the point, right? If Haveness instead special summoned a guy from deck instead of, you know, milling 3, you could argue that would be a better effect because of the fact that you could consistently get the stuff that you wanted, right? That being said, I do think that, yeah, honestly, yeah, Impulse is just so insane. Its effect is one of the most powerful effects in the game. Just, like, genuinely speaking, being able to summon something from the deck is up there in terms of most powerful effects in the game. So, yeah, all in all, there you go. I do think it is very strong. But that's going to be it for the tier list. Let me know down below if you guys agree. This was just kind of like a cool tier list that I found. And was like, oh, hey, that seems like a very cool idea. What are the strongest archetypal hand traps? And honestly, with the newer archetypes basically all receiving their own in-archetype hand traps, it's very interesting to see, like, the design philosophy, and a lot of it is just like, hey, do the combo on the opponent's turn. And eventually we're always going to be just playing the game constantly back and forth. There's not really going to matter, you know, whose turn it is, who's not, you know, who isn't currently having the turn, etc. Anyway, I'm going to call it quits there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.